Anthony Bickmore, you are the chair of the Hunsdon Eastwick Gilston Planning Group.
Neighbourhood
Planning Group. Here we are in Gilston, looking there in the distance, United Glass, Edinburgh Way. The plan for the villages, the plan for all these houses, is it a done deal?
No, it's far from being a done deal. The principle of development, so the principle of was tested at public inquiry and that has been granted, but the actual detail of the outline planning application and therefore the detailed plans of the villages is still being worked on.
So what happens next? I know you recently received the press release regarding the call-in. Yep. Can you explain that to our readers or viewers what that means?
So the developers made outline planning applications. Those were with the council for about 3 years plus or something. They were then taken to a planning committee meeting and the council resolved to grant planning permission on completion of some of the legal documentation. As a neighbourhood and community group, we felt that the reasons that they hadn't given proper regard to our reasons and representations, so we have asked the Secretary of State to halt giving the planning consent and for him to call in the application so he can look at this and make a decision on the application as a whole rather than as a salami sliced scheme.
What's the best outcome for you and the residents here, and possibly the residents of Harlow?
So the best outcome which we as a community are about is about recognising that there will be development and getting a good development of nice villages which are built on a human scale. So what they're looking at is, in parts of these villages, is building 5 or 6 stories. You can see we're in open countryside. That's more akin to a development of the nature of Bishop Stortford, say the centre of Bishop Stortford, than what the developers promised us and the council promised us of being Hertfordshire villages in Hertfordshire countryside. And we're just trying to make sure we get what was the original promises and how the land was released from its greenbelt status to accommodate this development.
Is it still a case that when it will happen, not will it happen? Is there a case that somebody might say, no, we've got enough houses in the southeast?
No, I don't. I think that's unlikely because the site has been allocated. We didn't welcome that allocation, but we've had to work with the reality of that allocation following a public inquiry.
Who's in charge of making sure this may not be a question for you, so forgive me, that this is going to be a community? For example, over in Gilden Park, 3 years on, the residents there say, we don't have a community centre, we don't have a school, we are, inverted commas, just houses. Who's the guardian of that?
Well, a lot of that guardianship sits within the legal agreements that are attached to the planning application. If those legal agreements are badly drawn, or they say that you only need to provide this facility after you've built X many thousand houses, or 100 houses, or whatever, then those communities will start off the wrong footing. So for an example of that would be that Pye Corner, which you would have come through to get up here, is a tight and constricted road. The developers are saying that they can build another 3,500 homes, 10 people into the villages without doing anything to remedy the traffic conditions in Pye Corner.
Do you feel that, I'm spreading the story out here, the conversation out, that the people who lived in Harlow in 1947, 1949 and then saw what was going to happen, whether they agreed or not, are you really in the same situation? Is it time just, what happened in 1947 as we look to 2047? Time is just marching on.
Well, time is marching on. I think we recognise that there will be development here. What we're trying to argue for, and what we are arguing for, and the principle of what we're doing, is to make sure that the development comes as good development in a proper form.
What's the timescale here for the call-in?
Well, that's with the Secretary of State, so obviously a very busy man with lots of things to look at. So what we hope is he will put a holding direction, which means that the process on the planning application is halted whilst he considers whether to make a call-in. If he makes a call-in, then there will be a period of time whilst the parties get their representations together for that call-in, and then it may be later on this year that there's a examination in public or a public inquiry.
Some of the politicians in Harlow seem to think that this is inevitably part of your event, like take a border and skip it somewhere north of here. Do you think that's inevitably going to happen, that you'll become, Harlow and Gilston Garden Town will become this larger area from Latin Priory across to here?
Well, The councils are trying to work together on that anyway, so in terms of how to make the development, because there is a relationship across the county, but it's a case of where do you stop that? Do you say that Sawbridgeworth should be in the garden town because it's also there? Do you say that Bishop Stortford should be in it? Or do you say that actually there is a definitive border, which is the railway line, the county border, the floodplain, and all those other bits, and this is separate administrative areas which need to work together.
There's going to be a huge amount of disruption, isn't there?
Yes.
Where we're standing here, people can see Edinburgh away in the background, but we're talking about roads coming through here.
Oh yes, absolutely. There'll be a significant sustainable transport link which will come through between us and the house down there, taking traffic round the villages, and behind you you'll see landscape and in the distance pylons, and all of that will be covered in housing between here and the pylons.
You seem very philosophical about the whole thing.
Be too philosophical, but I'm trying to calm myself down and respond in a rational way to this development and make sure that we, as I said, get quality development, nice homes for families, and that will include affordable houses which the developer and the council say are no longer needed. But we don't know where they're going to find the 1,700 affordable houses which they've agreed to, will be developed by this scheme.